Are you tired of thinking about drinking, trying to control it, and ending up in the same loop? Welcome to the Feel Good Alcohol Free podcast, where high achieving women learn how to step out of the stop start cycle and build a life that feels calm, clear, and alcohol free on purpose. I'm your host, Lindsay Hennekey, accredited sober coach and former high functioning drinker. After more than a decade of drinking every night while keeping up a big career and a life that looked fine from the outside, I rebuilt my identity from the inside out. Now I help women stop negotiating with themselves and trust their own decisions again. This isn't a podcast full of cliches or willpower pep talks. You're getting real conversations, lived experience coaching, and practical tools you can use inside your actual life, not perfect conditions. So take a breath. You're here because you're ready to feel good in your real life. So let's get started. Welcome back. I'm so glad that you are spending a little bit of time with me today. Can you believe? I feel like I start a lot of episodes with, can you believe, whatever date it is? But can you believe that we are approaching Memorial Day weekend here in the United States? And it is, that unofficial kickoff to summer. And I want to talk about this topic of, I don't feel ready to quit drinking. I want to tell you something, first of all. If you have been listening to this podcast, if you are reading Quit Lit, if you are following sobriety accounts on Instagram, you are already quitting drinking. Doesn't matter if you're still actively drinking in certain times. You are in the process. That's the journey. That is part of this journey. Okay, we're standing at the edge of Memorial Day weekend. And if you're like most of the women that I work with, you've been telling yourself a very specific lie for the last couple of weeks here. Maybe you've been saying something like, now isn't a good time to stop drinking. Gosh, I can't believe it's already just about summertime. I'm going to wait until September. I'm just going to live this summer as I always did. And in September, when the kids are back in school, when life has more structure, then I'm going to focus on this. I have too much going on right now. But here's what I want you to think about. How many times have you said something like that before? Is it now May? And did you have a similar conversation with yourself in like November last year? Like, oh, it's the holidays. I'm going to wait until January. Did you say that to yourself? And 100% no judgment. I did the same exact thing for years because there was always going to be something in my way of being successful. And that's really what this is all about. You don't feel ready. Ready isn't necessarily a feeling that you have. It's a decision that you make because there is always going to be life happening where you once drank to cope, celebrate, whatever. You once drank during the thing that you are now working to live your life without alcohol in the picture. So that just means that you have to practice doing all of the things without alcohol. The reason why this journey honestly sucks so bad is you're not trying to just change one thing in your life. You're not. You are trying to go from living one way to living a completely different way. We're not talking about making one lifestyle change, like adding exercise on a weekly basis to your routine. While that can be challenging and it takes a while and, momentum and there's some restarts there to become consistent with it, sure. But that's one thing. When you're quitting drinking, you're trying to change almost everything about your life. If you're listening to this podcast and you're like I was, where drinking was a daily thing. So I want you to have compassion for yourself on that piece. I want you to love yourself and say, I am growing, I am evolving, I am stripping away something that no longer serves me, and I'm moving towards an identity that, she's it's not like this whole new identity. It's kind of like maybe an old version of you, just shiny and new because you're a lot wiser now. But she no longer drinks. This impacts so many different layers of our lives, which I say all the time that it's okay for it to be messy. It's okay for you to have to, get off the bike, get back on the bike, get off the bike, get back on the bike, because it's all learning. To recap that little tangent that I just went on, you are currently quitting drinking. Something that you do a month from now is not you quitting drinking. You're doing it right now. Here's the reality of this. If you wait for a clear calendar to change your relationship with alcohol, you're going to be waiting until January 2027. You might be saying, well, I can start in September, but then in September, maybe you'll do sober September. Is that what they call it now? Or sober October. And that's going to be amazing. But what is also going to happen if you don't have a clear plan? You are going to be worrying about Halloween maybe, or maybe you have a fall wedding that you have to go to and you're thinking about like, okay, well, maybe I could do sober September, but then I've got this like wedding the first weekend of October or whatever the thing is. And so you're already like thinking of the things that you will like, quote unquote, have to drink for, or more so, that could just potentially be an obstacle that make you feel like you're going to fail. And that is the real reason why we kick the can on this, because we don't have these perfect circumstances and there's obstacles that we see in the, not so distant or in the distant future that equal failure to us. Well, I can't start. There's that word again, start. You've already started if you're listening to this. Can't start now because Memorial Day weekend is coming up and we have that cookout and we're going to be drinking or we're going to be doing yard work all weekend. And then my husband's going to want to have a beer after and we're going to go to that brewery and we're going to do this. And so you've associated Memorial Day weekend with drinking and ultimately saying, nope, can't start now because I'm going to fail in, this weekend. Can't start now because we have that wedding next week. And that's like a signal of when you have to drink and it equates to you that you could potentially fail, because that's, I know, what we're all afraid of. We're tired. You're a high achieving woman. You're tired of failing. I know, I get it. I did the same exact thing. But what if I told you that going through this next weekend, change what success looks like? Change what quitting drinking looks like and means for yourself. And maybe by the end of Memorial Day weekend, maybe you have a couple of beers at a cookout. But maybe there's also a lot of things that you do where you don't drink where you normally would have. That is the name of the game. Practice not drinking. Okay. So today we are talking about why not being ready is actually the very best time to start. Okay, I just contradicted myself, but you already started not drinking. But it's definitely why not being ready is the best time to push yourself further. So for high functioning women, summer isn't necessarily just a season. It's like this high stakes performance of a lot of different things. You've got beach vacations planned, maybe camping trips, maybe you've got a lot of cookouts coming your way that you're going to or that you're hosting at your house. It's kids not in their structured day-to-day school. They've got summer camps that are, it's like 8 to noon. Isn't that the weirdest thing ever? It's like you need care for more than 20 hours a week when you are a high functioning woman who has a career and who is like, in back-to-back meetings all day. Summer camp that's from 8 to 12 just doesn't cut it. So the stress is higher is what I'm saying here. I get it. And you've worked hard all week, all year, and you feel like you deserve that cold rosé at the barbecue. But it's also a survival tool to handle this overstimulation that summer can bring. This overstimulation of longer days, which are beautiful and amazing as well. But we're getting a little less rest. We're out of that winter hibernation, which had its own, repercussions to it. But you've got this overstimulation of the hosting, the kids being out of routine, the social pressure of the summer fun. those beach trips. And these things signal to us, these are just all cues to the brain. Oh, well, I have to drink for that. I have this coming up. I have to drink. And so again, this is what I mean, going from living one way to living a whole new way. And by the way, that whole new way is the way that you're proud of yourself. You feel rested all the time. You're sharp as a tack, but it's just going to take you a little more practice to get there. This is where alcohol just really like F's with our mind. I want to paint a picture of something that really happens a lot. And we do like a lot of planning to make sure that we are successful to hit a milestone without drinking. For example, maybe it's a wedding, or maybe it is a beach trip, and you have all the plans in place. You have your exit plan, you have what you're going to drink ready to go, you know what you're going to wear, you've given yourself the pep talk, you've told your partner or your husband, hey, I'm not going to drink tonight. You've set a boundary that, I want to leave at X time, and, I don't want to stay all night, or whatever the things are. You've planned out who you're going to talk to. You've planned out what you're going to do when you start to feel like you just want to fit in and have that champagne. Like, you've got it all planned out. And then what happens is you get back to your hotel room, or you get home after the thing, and it's like now you finally can relax. You can exhale from it all. And that is actually a really common time to want to pour a drink, because you can finally kind of turn yourself off. This is an example of you're in the growth zone. When you go into a situation for the first time and you're not going to drink, you're on, because you're doing it differently. You don't want to be complacent. You're making sure that you've got the mocktail planned, or the NA beer, or, you've got every second of it, and you don't want to mess it up. So then when it's over and you're not in that growth area, that out of the discomfort and the awkwardness, you finally get to like sit in your chair at home. It's like, whew. It's really common to have your slip after. You might successfully navigate a sober beach trip and feel like a hero and be so excited, only to come home to a stressful Monday and find yourself craving a drink more than ever at the end of that first work day. And it's frustrating because you're like, I just did this really hard thing. Why is this Monday what's taking me out? Like, why? How did that happen? And it's because alcohol touches every layer of your life, not just the big ones, not just the celebrations, not just the Saturday afternoon brewery trip with your friends or your partner. It's like everywhere. So that's what I mean when I say you're not just trying to, add exercise into your routine. You're trying to go from living one way to living a whole different way. It takes practice, takes repetition, and it takes support and accountability as well, because it means that you have to do the thing when nobody else is watching. And when you don't have support and accountability, and you've got that kind of pressure on you, it's going to take you a lot longer. You're going to find that you've got 2 steps backwards way more often than you've got 2 steps forward. Sometimes this time of year, we have this like September illusion, and we tell ourselves, it's okay. I'm just going to, I'm going to take a break from this whole trying to take a break from drinking thing, because we've got, again, too many signals in front of us going to our brain that say, if you start this now, you're going to fail. And I mean, this was my life. This was so many times in my journey. You think that September is going to be easier because of that routine, but let me tell you that August is going to bring the anxiety of back to school, and October brings Halloween parties, and suddenly you've kicked the can so far down the road that you've lost another year of your life to negotiation. It's going to happen so quick. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I practiced this. The summer leading up to my last drink. So my last drink was in August of 2020. And that spring was COVID, obviously. We've talked about that before. And my journey was reignited, I guess. Like I had definitely taken that first half of 2020, not really focusing on my journey. I became very complacent. I had abandoned reading a lot of Quit Lit during the first 3 to 4 months. My husband and I had taken a trip to Greece. We got home just in the nick of time before things were locked down from the pandemic, like within a couple of days. And so it was just a very interesting time for all of us, as I'm sure you can relate. During that time, I also had been presented with health scare issues where in August, I ended up having a hysterectomy. I just had a lot of issues with my uterus, which were a lot of related to my fertility issues. If you are new here, that is a big part of my story. We'll get into that in other episodes, or I also talk about them in past episodes. So I had this health thing going on. I was really bored at my job. I was not challenged. And sometimes I think that I was drinking even more to deal with that instead of doing something about it. But that spring, at the beginning of this pandemic, I decided to go on a little bit of a job hunt while I was having these enormous health issues. And I was drinking more than ever. And I had applied for this role. And I could tell right away that this was going to be a challenge to get this job. I had gone through 5 interviews with various people in the organization before leading up to the weekend that I'm about to tell you about. So the final interview for this job was the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. I remember being so nervous, like, oh my gosh, and this was not just like an hour interview with somebody. Like this interview was a 4-hour interview. It was a role play where I was handed a sheet of paper with a bunch of problems that I had to solve on it. And the entire global leadership team, like playing different characters and interrupting me throughout the whole thing. It was wild. I was exhausted after. So anyway, I didn't really know a lot about the interview other than pretty much what I just told you, that I was going to be handed a piece of paper and that I was going to be in a role play scenario and that it could last up to 4 hours. That was pretty much the information I had going into it. So I was thinking to myself, we're going into Memorial Day weekend, and I had been drinking quite a bit with the pandemic. And I really knew that I needed to be sharp for this interview. And I told myself, okay, also Memorial Day weekend is my husband's birthday, pretty much always falls, on or right around to Memorial Day weekend. And this time it was on, I think, the Sunday or the Monday. And we were having just a couple of friends over for a little cookout. And that weekend, it still was COVID and people weren't really supposed to be hanging around each other. So we had, I think, 2 other couples coming over. And I was so nervous because I had never had a Memorial Day weekend party or celebration where, lots of beer or rosé were not the highlight of it. And so I had told myself, Lindsay, you're only allowed to have 2 beers on your husband's birthday, like during this get together. That was really all I wanted to do because I had this interview at noon on Tuesday and I knew it was going to be the whole afternoon. So I did. I only had 2 drinks and I felt very positive about it, but I spent a lot of energy thinking about how I could only have those 2 drinks. A lot of mental focus around it, a lot of worry, like, what if I F this up? What if I can't have just the 2 drinks? What if I end up drinking too much? Like, oh my gosh, like, what are you going to do? And so I was very strategic and very careful the entire weekend to not drink. And I only had those 2 drinks that day. But it was like all I could do. It was all I focused on. It was a full-time job to not drink that weekend. I kept myself occupied the whole weekend doing home projects and like all the things so that I wouldn't be focused on alcohol. And my husband drank and I mean, my husband was always able to really, he still is, like, he can just have a couple beers. To him, he's not thinking about it. It's not a big part of his life like it was for me. But it was all I could think about. But I will tell you that I was so proud of myself. And I went into that interview, and at the end, they handed me an offer that was more money than I had ever made in my career and more responsibility than I had ever had in my career. And I could not wait to go home and tell my husband. And that night, when I got home on Tuesday, my husband had a bottle of champagne waiting for me because I texted him that I had gotten the offer and I couldn't wait to tell him about it. And I drank the entire bottle of champagne that night. And like, that's what this does. It's like I needed that. I wanted to come down. It was like I had met my goal for the weekend of only having 2 beers. But then after like that interview and I came home and I was like highest stress, but also so happy that I needed to like come down from that. And I pretty much drank a whole bottle of champagne. And the next morning I gave my notice to my CEO, and it just was this cycle. And I was like, I don't want this cycle anymore. I don't want to be thinking about drinking as much as I just had this last, like, specifically that kind of 3 or 4 day time period. And it wasn't good. I met my goal of only having 2 drinks that whole weekend, but it didn't feel good. That didn't feel free. Fast forward, that was a very big lesson in those few days. That's really my point here. I wasn't ready to not drink ever again at that moment, but it was a big lesson in my journey around practicing not drinking, making myself sit in discomfort, do things that normally I would have always drank at. Normally I would have drank too much at a little birthday gathering for my husband, especially, outside, it's finally warming up, like all of those signals signaling my brain. Again, you already are in the process of quitting drinking. Just like I was already in the process of quitting drinking. That was one scenario of I used to live one way and now I wanted to live another way. Multiple signals to my brain for that weekend saying, you should be drinking, you should be drinking. But I sat in discomfort through many of them and I made it. And that's what I want for you too. I want you to stop waiting to feel ready, because ready is just a fantasy. You don't need to be ready. You need to be practicing. You wouldn't show up to a big presentation at work without practicing the material. Yet you expect yourself to just be sober one day without ever practicing a Friday night or a holiday cookout without drinking. I want you to look at what the goal is here. The goal of this summer isn't to be perfect. It's to gather information and data on what your life actually looks like without that chemical off switch. So also, fast forward, after I got that job interview, I just want to close the loop on this story, okay? I started 2 weeks later, couldn't believe it. It all happened so fast. And I think it was actually June 15th that I started. And on August 10th, I had my last day one. And so it took me, a couple more months of drinking, sometimes drinking every single day, and really like warming myself up, because I knew when I started to sit in meetings with my new coworkers and look around the room, I was not going to be successful in this role if I continued to drink the way I had been drinking. I figured that out quickly, and I definitely had a couple of last hurrahs in there, which I've talked about before. The weekend leading up to that last day one, I drank probably more than I had in, the whole summer. It was not pretty, but I feel like I really did get it out of my system. But I really want you to know that like all that time I was quitting drinking, and you are too. So, okay, I want you to look at the next, look at the 72 hours that is Memorial Day weekend. If you have a long weekend coming up, I want you to really look at it. And maybe there's a cookout on the calendar, like the one I had for my husband's birthday a few years ago. I had that big interview. Think of what's going on Tuesday. Maybe you have the whole week off, but I want you to look at this long weekend. And like I did, I realized I couldn't be the woman who strolled into that interview sharp, confident, and ready, while also being the woman who spent 3 days drinking in the sunshine. This is an example of your actions have to match up with who you want to be. So your assignment is to pick one part of this weekend, just one, and decide now that you are going to practice it alcohol-free. Don't worry about forever. Don't worry about the rest of the summer. I just want you to look at one part of your holiday weekend as a rehearsal for the version of you who doesn't need a drink to handle having a burger and a conversation, who doesn't need a drink to, play cornhole with your friends or dust off the paddleboard for its first outing for the summer. How does she stand? What does she drink instead? How does she leave when she's tired? This is what I want you to think about. Think about this version of you, and then pick a moment for the holiday weekend and practice it. Say, this is the time. This is the cookout I'm going to practice this at. This is the afternoon I'm going to practice this at. Pick it. And, if it all feels really scary right now, find some low-hanging fruit. Shorten the time period that you pick, or, just pick something that feels doable and then build on that. Everything has to be a little bit higher stakes every time, Okay. I hope this was helpful for you. I want you to know you're already quitting drinking. You're never going to feel like there's a perfect time, and you're never going to feel ready. Being ready is you making the decision. I'm ready to do something different. I'm ready to change this part about myself. And I know that there's going to be obstacles in the way, but I'm ready to face those too. I'm ready to practice not drinking. So if you're listening to this and you're realizing that you've been kicking the can on your drinking journey for months or maybe even years, waiting until summer is over is not the answer. Support and accountability is the answer. The reason you keep waiting for a better time is because you're trying to do this alone, and doing it alone feels really restrictive. It feels really heavy. It's where shame builds, and it's where we procrastinate. Inside my coaching containers, inside Feel Good AF, we don't wait for perfect conditions. We work through the beach weeks, the stressful Tuesdays, the holiday weekends in real time. I help you bridge that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it when the pressure's on. And I have space for 2 women to join me and start their one-on-one work before summer truly hits. Do not wait. Okay. I hope you have an amazing holiday weekend or kickoff to summer, whatever it is that you have going on. And just remember, I believe in you. And if you're having trouble believing in yourself right now, you can borrow my belief in you. You've got this, and send me a message, send me a DM, book a discovery call, enroll online. We can start this work together, and you're going to be so proud AF of yourself. Thank you for listening to the Feel Good Alcohol Free podcast. If this episode landed for you, it would mean a lot if you left a review or take a quick screenshot of it and share it on social media. That's how this show reaches more women who are ready to stop living in the drinking loop and start leading themselves with confidence again. I'm on a mission to change the way high achieving women think about alcohol, because you don't need more willpower or more rules. tools around your drinking. You need real support, real tools, and the truth about what's actually possible for you. So keep showing up for yourself. Keep telling the truth about what you want. And remember, the life you want isn't found in a glass or a bottle of wine. It's built in the decisions that you can stand behind, the ones that you feel really good about. My DMs are always open, and I can't wait to get to know you better. I will see you next week in the next episode.